Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman.
And I'm Maria Nagaga.
And this is the Microsoft Virtual Academy Introduction to ASP.NET Core 1.0.
So for this introduction, we're going to be focusing on people who haven't done this before or are trying ASP.NET Core for the first time. So Scott, how long have you been doing .NET?
So I've been doing .NET kind of since the beginning, but there's ASP.NET that I've done for many, many years. First web forms, then MVC and Web API. But this ASP.NET Core is a new thing, so I'm kind of new to Core.
Okay, so if someone like me who is new to ASP.NET, I could start on this.
Right, so your background is in what languages?
It's Python and Java, very traditional CS.
Okay,
yeah.
So we'll be thinking about .NET Core, C# in this particular case,
yeah,
and ASP.NET Core. So I've got a background in ASP.NET, but not Core. You've got a background in programming, but not ASP.NET.
Yeah.
Together, we're going to try to learn this and make some programs.
So this is going to be pretty cool.
All right.
So let's get started.
All right, let's do it.
So the first thing we would want to do is go and get .NET Core.
Okay.
So we could go to .NET, and we can see it on the screen right now, and just hit enter. Let's go and navigate to that page.
So .NET takes us over to this website here that says any developer, any app, any platform, and it's got 3 choices.
So which one do we pick?
Well, since we're talking about .NET Core, and we're interested in cross-platform server apps, web applications.
Okay.
We're going to pick that one. The other options are for Windows development. You can use the .NET Full Framework, which will let you make Windows apps, apps that go in the Windows Store.
Oh, okay. That's nice to know.
Okay. And then you've got mobile apps for things like Android and iOS and things like that.
So like one code base on all these different platforms.
Exactly. All of this is .NET. Okay. But we're talking about .NET Core, and we're talking about ASP.NET Core.
All right.
Okay. So we'll click download. There's even more choices.
There are even more choices, right? And the instructions are right there on the screen. So why don't we give this a go? So we've downloaded the .NET SDK, which you have on your machine.
Right. And of course, I downloaded it for Windows because I'm on Windows, and this website noticed that I was on Windows, right?
That's pretty neat.
But I've also got potentially Linux or Mac
or
Docker. And we'll talk about those more in other MVAs. So it says install the .NET Core SDK. I already installed it on my local machine.
All right.
But there's a choice here for I can get Visual Studio Community, or I can just do this all at the command line with my own editor.
Yeah, so you can actually get started before actually downloading Visual Studio.
Well, you could even go so far as to do some things in the browser, can't you?
Yes, we can.
So in fact, I'll back up. And where do I go?
So if you go to the bottom of the screen, you actually notice that you can build your very first Hello World application in there.
So here I am in the browser, having installed nothing.
Nothing.
And I can go and learn. And then if I click here and say go to the full tutorial, there's a really nice online 20-step tutorial on learning C#, and you can do it with no previous experience.
Yes, it's a really great way to get learning, and I've actually used this with high school kids.
Excellent. So if I go back to where it says download, I can get Visual Studio Community.
Yep.
It's free, and it's a professional IDE, an integrated development environment, and just follow these steps. Or if I would really like to do my own thing with my own editor, I can just get the .NET Core SDK and a thing called Visual Studio Code that we'll talk about.
Yes, we'll be looking at it a little bit later.
In a minute. So how do I know that I have .NET installed?
So let's go over to your command line.
Okay.
And I want you to type in .NET. Right, you have your version there.
Okay, so I have .NET on this machine, .NET Core.
It's there, and it's ready for you to use.
Okay.
Now, a big question for people is, would this experience be the same if they weren't running on Windows?
That's a good question. Do we have a Mac?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so let's switch over to the Mac. So here is your Mac, and I'll type .NET on this machine, and it looks like it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
So does that mean that all of the things that we're going to be going through will work on Windows or Mac?
Yes. So if someone is following along with this tutorial at home and has a Mac, they're good to go.
Okay. And we'll talk about Visual Studio Code in a little bit that will let people edit their code on both a Mac or Windows or Linux. The only things that we'll be doing that won't work on a Mac would be using Visual Studio, the full version.
IDE, yeah.
Okay. But to be clear, ASP.NET Core runs great on Mac, on Linux, on Windows, and you should be able to follow along pretty well.
You should.
All right, let's switch back to Windows. How do I make my first application?
So let's start with something. Let's make a directory.
Okay.
And let's call it Hello World,
Okay.
because we're going to build a Hello World application.
All right. I have an empty folder now.
Okay, so you have an empty folder. So we're building a new .NET application. So it's as simple as typing .NET new.
Okay. .NET new. It says create a new C# project, and I've got 2 files.
Yes, so you have your program.cs and you have your project.json. And those are the 2 different files that you have in there. So let's go ahead and look at what's in program.cs.
Okay. Now I'm going to do everything at the command line until you have me do otherwise. But it looks like we've got a console application that says console hello world.
Yep. So why don't we run this? But before we do that, we'd need to restore some packages. Why do we need to do that?
Well, I'm seeing in the folder here, I don't see any libraries, any supporting functions. .NET Core has a bunch of supporting stuff. It actually gets installed in program files.net. I go right here. You can see that .NET can have multiple versions, and it all gets installed in program files. And it has this shared framework full of all the different libraries you might want to use.
Oh,
And those libraries come down in what are called NuGet packages that we'll talk about a little bit more later.
that's going to be exciting. Okay.
Okay.
So-
But like you just said, we need to tell our application what libraries are going to be used. We looked at program.cs.
So should we have a look at what's in project.json?
Right. Project.json is like a project file, right?
Okay.
And it says we're making a core app. So we're going to make a basic core application. And right now, it doesn't really have any dependencies. It
No.
just needs .NET itself. And when we say .NET, we have to say .NET what?
.NET Restore?
Restore. So restoring packages for project.json.
JSON.
Okay. And now it goes and it does this thing called writing a lock file. Now, when you're doing this stuff, you don't really have to think about it too much. You just know that you type .NET new, .NET restore, and things will work.
Yeah.
Now that project lock.json basically calculates all of the libraries and stuff that you need and then locks it down and says, here's all the versions.
Oh, these are all the versions of things that you need for the current application that you're running.
Exactly. For this application in this folder, nothing else. It doesn't change your computer.
Oh, that's
Okay.
good.
All right, so how do I run this?
.NET Run.
.NET run. Now here it says, project will be compiled because outputs are missing. And then it says, hello world. So it compiled it and it ran it.
Then yes,
Okay. So it said hello world and then it exited.
it's done because that's what your program's doing.
Okay. Can we do something a little more advanced than that?
We probably do. Let's give it a try. So
Can
let's
I open it in Notepad? Is that
open it up in Notepad.
Okay. So I'll put the Notepad over here, and I'll put the command prompt over here. Now I'm using Notepad 2, so I get some coloring, but it's just a text editor.
Yeah, simple text editor.
Okay. What should we do?
So when you do this for the first time in school, you learn how to write a line and then you learn how to read a line.
Okay. So we know how to write hello world. We should probably go and say read line. Should we read something in?
Yeah, we're going to read something in. So it'd be nice, like I think it's always like your name. So what's your name?
Okay. So I'll make a variable called name, and I'll read in my name.
Yeah.
And then I want to say hello, my name.
Yeah, then you'll have to write it back. So you
Okay.
need a response. So you'll have another console write line.
Okay. Now what?
This is great,
Right.
right? So I know there are different ways to do this, but the way I've been traditionally doing it is that I would have hello,
Okay.
and then I'd have curly brackets.
Curly braces, right? Yeah.
Oh, yes, we call them braces in America.
Oh, are they brackets overseas?
Yeah, they're brackets overseas.
Okay.
And then I'd be something nice like, hello, welcome to C#.
Okay.
But now,
Okay.
right? Oh, you also need to close it up.
Okay.
But now we need to know what's going to be filled in where the curly brackets are. Sorry, curly braces.
That's okay. So that's the name in that case.
Okay. So fingers crossed, let's see if this runs.
All right. So I just go back. Do I need to say restore again?
No, you should be able to just say .NET Run.
Okay. Hello world. Scott, enter. Hello, Scott.
Exactly.
That worked great. Now C# is a language that's always growing and always improving. So there's kind of new and interesting features. This console.write line here, where it replaces that curly brace 0 with name, there's a new way to do that in C#.
Oh, okay.
So I can put a $sign there in front of the string to say that this is a special string or a magic string. And instead of 0, I'll just say name. Okay? And I can try that again. And you'll notice what we're doing here is we're making a change and we go run.
Okay.
Make a change and we go run.
Oh, and is that something that's new?
Nope, that's kind of just programming. The idea, though, that you're iterating, right?
Yeah.
But you notice that I have to keep exiting the application and going back and forth. That's just part of life, okay? But this is a console app. Works pretty well.
Works really well. Now, why don't we look at this on the web, but instead of using Notepad, let's try something else. Let's use Visual Studio Code.
Okay, so Visual Studio Code is more than a text editor,
Yeah.
but it's less than an integrated development environment or an IDE.
Exactly.
I kind of think about it in like Microsoft Word and Microsoft WordPad. You know what I mean? Or it's
Yeah.
just like it's not the whole thing, but
it's bits of it.
Exactly. Okay. So I've gone and downloaded Visual Studio Code, and I've got it sitting right here in my downloads folder. So I'm just going to install that. And I want to point out it's actually not that big of an application. It's like 30 megs. Didn't take any time at all.
So it's not going to take a long time to install.
Should not take much time. Okay. And I'm going to just go and run that install.
And this runs everywhere, right?
Yep. So Visual Studio Code is a cross-platform app. Let me just go and hit next, next, next. And it should take just about 30 seconds to install. It's cross-platform. It's actually written in a language called TypeScript, but it works on Mac, it works on Linux, and it works on Windows, and it's totally free.
Oh, that's nice. Free is really nice.
Free is nice, and this is an important thing to remember. .NET is free, Visual Studio Code is free, and they're both open source. So if you're more advanced, you can get involved on GitHub.
Okay, so if I wanted to contribute to this, I could, but also if I wanted to get started, I can do it for absolutely no cost.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the open source magic. So now let's go back over into our folder there, Hello World, and I should have code on my path. So I can just type code, right?
Yep.
But I want to edit that application right there. So I'm going to say code, and I'll put a dot there,
And so it's just going to open it up.
where dot is the current folder.
Okay.
Now I could just go to the command, go to the start menu and type code, but since we started at the command line, we'll exit the command line this way. Okay.
Can't wait to look at it.
All right. So Visual Studio Code pops up, and I'm using Control plus and minus to zoom in on that. And look at this down here. It says downloading the .NET Core debugger. It noticed that I had a .NET application.
And then it downloaded the necessary bits for you.
Right, and look at this even more. It just said the required things to debug are missing, add them. So it's noticed that this is a C# application, and it's telling me what to do. So you see on the left-hand side there where it says bin and program.cs? Watch that. I'm going to press yes, but watch the left-hand side. See, it made a VS Code folder, and it put stuff in there, so now VS Code knows how to run our application.
Oh, okay. So we're showing VS Code what to do with our application as soon as it's in there.
Exactly. And you know how I've been switching back and forth between the command prompt and VS Code?
Yep.
A little trick that I've learned recently in VS Code, you can push the tilde button. That's the button on the American keyboard that's near the 1. Control tilde. It'll actually open up a command prompt inside of Visual Studio Code. So that means that I can edit my code and have my command prompt open in the same application. So instead of switching back and forth,
You can do it all there.
which is nice.
That is a very nice feature to have.
Yep, absolutely. So then I think I can go .NET run here, and it works. Yep,
That's good.
isn't that good?
That's really good.
All right, so you were saying about how this is a console app, though. It's not a web app.
It's not a web app. So if I wanted to see Hello World in the browser, how do we start doing that?
Well, we need a web server, and we need a web server framework, a framework to take the string hello world and then give it off to the browser.
So from our conversation, I sense that we need some sort of package.
Right. So if we go over to project.json, remember before we talked about dependencies and things that the application might potentially need. We're going to go and add a dependency on a package that we don't actually have right now. And I'm going to start typing here. I'm putting it right here in dependencies, this is called JSON here, and I'm going to say quote, and as soon as I start typing,
The IntelliSense.
I'm getting IntelliSense. And IntelliSense is more than just autocomplete, right? It's actually being smart.
So it has context of what's happening.
It does. So it is actually calling up to a repository of libraries and populating them with what it thinks that I could be wanting. So I'll say Microsoft.asp.NET Core server.kestrel, and Kestrel is the name of the .NET Core, the ASP.NET Core web server.
Okay, and it will work everywhere.
Right. So Kestrel works everywhere. It runs exactly as we see it. What we're doing will work on a Mac.
Okay.
Now, when I say colon and quote here to pick the version, it's actually figuring out different versions. You can see that there's some older versions. I'm just going to pick the latest version of Kestrel, and then I'm just going to hit save. I'm just hitting Control S. And notice what happens.
It's restoring the packages.
It says there's unresolved dependencies.
Ooh.
I don't know where those are. So it says we're going to need to go and do that. So I'll click restore, but look at the output window. It's literally typed .NET Restore for me. So you can see as we've moved from the command line into Visual Studio Code, and we'll see later when we go into Visual Studio proper, we're going to have to do less and less.
Okay.
Right? You don't want to have to do all this stuff manually.
Every single time.
Yeah. But it's nice to know that you can do things manually.
So I can do it this way, or I can actually go back into command line and type .NET Restore.
Exactly. All right. So we've said that we want this Kestrel web server, but we really haven't done anything with it, though. Okay. We still have a console app. So if we run it, it's going to run exactly as before.
Oh, yes. You could actually, if you did it right now, you'd notice that it is going to run exactly as before.
Yeah. It's not just adding the package didn't save it. It didn't do anything. Okay. It's still the exact same application as before. So this is our main, right? That's our entry point into our application. And in this case, we're going to need to change this to make it say hello world on the web.
Okay. So would we need to add a new class?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to come in from that ASP.NET framework, and we're going to need to tell the system that we're using it. So here where we say using system, system is where we got console from,
Yes.
in fact. In fact, if I typed system.console.writeline, that's where that came from. And when I say using system, it's just kind of a shortcut to say, make it available for the whole
page. Okay.
So we're going to go and add a couple of things. We're going to say using, Microsoft. My typing is not so good today. Microsoft.ASP.NET Core. And see how I'm getting IntelliSense all the way. We're going to get a builder that's going to help us build our application. We're going to get a hosting namespace that's going to hold our application and host it. Okay. And then we're going to be using HTTP.
All right.
All right. So in our main here, we are going to kind of push this away for a second. We'll figure out what to do with our hello world, right? A little bit later. When we start up, we're going to make a new variable called host. And we're going to make a web host builder.
So what does that do?
The web host builder basically is the thing that hosts the web application. And it is kind of an interesting class because you're going to build this sentence that's going to go dot, do something, dot, do something, dot, do something, dot, build. Okay. And you're going to basically build up this chain of all the things that you need. So I say web host builder, and we're going to use
the Kestrel,
right? And then we need a startup class that we haven't made yet.
It's not there. Okay.
So I'm just going to say startup. And then I'll say dot build. But this is starting to scroll.
It's just scrolling all the way. I find this a little bit harder to read. Can we break it up?
Right. We can totally break it up because the end of the line is the semicolon. So it's totally fine to do it like this. People like to put the dot like that. All right? And that's the end of the line. But this is all conceptually one line.
All right.
All right. So we need this class startup. Now for us, I'll just put this in the same file.
Well, okay.
Is that okay? Public class startup. This class startup, that's this one here. You see how it's not squiggly anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I remove that,
we're going to have a squiggly line.
I'm going to have a squiggly there. And interestingly, when I do that, look up here. It says one reference.
Because it's referencing below.
Yeah, exactly. So Visual Studio Code is thinking about our application, and it knows what's being used. So it knows that startup just got referenced, and it's a nice way to navigate your app. So when you configure a web app, ASP.NET's going to call a method called configure. Okay, and this is part of just setting up a web app. Now, we're showing you this because we want you to understand the plumbing.
Yes.
But you probably don't have to think about this much after this.
After this, I won't have to think about this?
Well, because you could make the web app from scratch with .NET New.
Okay.
Another way, and you'll show me how. Or if you're using Visual Studio and you say File New Project.
All this is wired up for you?
Exactly. Okay, so it's nice to know about the plumbing, and then you hire a plumber. Okay, so configure is going to take a thing called iApplication Builder that we're going to use to build up our app.
So it's basically everything under iApplication Builder is stuff that we'd need to build up our application.
You can look at it like configure is set everything up.
Okay.
And down here, it's like run the thing we just set up.
All right.
Okay, so we need to take this app object and do something with it. Now for us, we're going to say hello world. So I'll just say app.run. And I'm going to open up the parentheses there. And we're going to put some stuff in those parentheses. Okay. So here, app.run is going to take a context. This is a little confusing, but you just have to roll with it. And we're going to say return context.response.write.
Async.
Async means kind of like do it and let go, as opposed to like just do it and sit around and wait for it to happen. So this is kind of the web's version of console.writeline.
Oh, okay. This is how you do it.
So it's like response.write instead of console.write.
Right.
Okay? All right. I'm going to pull that aside there. And let's split it up a little bit just to make it a little easier to read, because it's there's a lot going on there. Let's unpack this for a second. App.run opens here and closes there. Okay? And then we're passing in this lambda, this description. It's a description of what we want you to do. And we're saying when you run app, take the current HTTP call, the current web call, and run that.
Okay.
Okay, so we should try this and see if it works. So I'm going to just go out back to the command line here and say .NET restore and make sure everything's cool. Lock file has not changed, so didn't need to do that. .NET run. Hello world. Now why is it doing that?
Well, so if you went back to your main method, did you actually tell your program to run it?
No, so this is a great point. We built up the web host builder, but we still wrote out to the console. Never changed anything. So you have to do more than just build the host. You have to run the host. And you're going to bump into stuff like this, where you'll go, why did that happen? But there is a logic to these things. So here, we've removed the console.write line, and now we build up our host. We tell it, use the startup class over here, and then run. And let's see if this works. Now a bunch of stuff's happening that looks more interesting. It says hosting environment production. It's giving us the location. Looks like a bin debug. And then now listening on localhost 5000. So let's go to the, oops, I just hit Control-C and shut it down. There we go. Let's go and look at that.
And see if it works.
See if it works. Localhost 5000. There you go.
Pretty sweet.
Pretty sweet. Hello world on the web. Nice. But I'm noticing that I keep having to go back and forth.
Exactly. Like you have to go back and forth. Is there any way to...
Well, why do I have to go back and forth? Let's go and say hello Scott on the web. Save it. Go back over here and hit refresh. Okay, it is not saying hello Scott.
No.
Yeah.
So you'd have to run your application again?
Well, I need to go back over here. I need to stop it and then run it again. And then notice what it says here. Project will be compiled because inputs were modified. we always say things in such a fancy computer science way. Stuff changed. I need to make it again.
Okay.
Okay.
So if we went back to the browser, would it have changed?
Yep.
So what if I just want to refresh the page?
Exactly. So other languages, like PHP and Node, have this experience where you make a change and hit refresh, and make a change and hit refresh. Remember at the beginning I had the DOS box or the command prompt and Notepad, and I had it split screen.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice to have my code and my browser, right?
That would be nice.
Yep, and just hit refresh. But someone's going to need to watch all of that code, and when it sees it change, recompile.
So does .NET have something for us that we could use?
There's a thing called .NET Watch, which is a tool that we can add.
Okay.
All right.
So a tool is different from a dependency?
So a dependency is an application, is a library that your application is going to use at runtime, and a tool is a dependency that you're going to use at compile time or at development time.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to need a tool for .NET Watch. So let's go and Google with Bing here. .NET Watch. There you go, a watcher for .NET projects. So this is up on GitHub, and it says here how to install. Add this to the tools section of your project JSON. So I'm just going to take that there and copy that into the clipboard.
Okay.
All right. And now I don't have a tools section.
So we have to make our tools section?
Yeah. And this can be a little confusing because it's like, well, where
does it go?
Yeah. I think it goes here. Tools. Oops. And I pasted it. I actually made an extra. I made two tool sections. And if you mess it up, let's actually mess it up on purpose.
Yeah, let's do that.
So you see how I messed this up? I have an extra curly brace here. He's upset. It's upset. Let's go and see what happens. .NET Restore. Did it work anyway? That's impressive.
It worked?
I don't know. It must have ignored that extra one. I want to see. I'm surprised it didn't break. Let's try again.
Do you want to try breaking it?
There you go. Unexpected end of content in this path. So you want your JSON file, your JavaScript file, to have the right number of braces. But when we get into Visual Studio, that's the visual part of Visual Studio, right? We'll be able to not look at this file so much, and we'll be able to just use a dialog.
A dialog box that will be able to do that for us.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So we added .NET Watch, and I can come out to either command line. I can do it from here in the command line or over in the command prompt.
So now we're going to check if we have .NET Watch.
Yes, and see if we did it right. I should be able to then to say .NET Restore, which we did successfully. We'll make sure. See, restoring packages for tool.
All right.
So it's brought that tool in. Then I say .NET Watch. But here it says, well, okay, well, what exactly do you want to do? Before we said .NET Run.
Okay.
We want to say .NET Watch.
Run.
Okay, so .NET Watch basically lets you put whatever you want after. So in the future, you'll see about like .NET Test. You would say .NET Watch.
Test. So I can use .NET Watch. What else can I use .NET Watch with?
Basically, it's a wrapper for any other command that you could call.
Okay, so I could I use .NET Watch Restore?
I don't think you could. That probably would get messed up. I've never actually tried that. Yeah, I guess you can.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know
if I want to do that, but that's interesting. I did not know that. Cool. So let's try .NET Watch Run. And it says...
So what is it telling me?
Yeah, look. So this part here is new. It says .NET Watcher. That's this part here. Running .NET with the following arguments. Run.
Okay.
Okay. So it's watching .NET. And this is what we saw before. Okay, this part here we saw before. But this is new. All right?
All right. So if we go in and change our code.
Yeah, let me do this. I'll put the box
side
over
by
here,
side.
and we'll do a little side-by-side action. And we'll open this up. And I'm going to just move my window over so we can see everything. Here is our Hello Scott on the web. Okay, let's change that. And we'll say Hello MVA. And I'm going to go Save. I could use a hotkey, but I want you to see the menu item. See? file changed program.cs. So it actually noticed the file change. It kicked over, or it knocked away the .NET process and started a fresh one, which then noticed the things modified and reran the whole thing. So the experience is such that I can go like this. Okay, hello MVA.
And you can do it again.
Control S, come back here, hit refresh.
So when you hit Control S, that just kicks the process for you.
Well, when I hit Control S, that is save. Then the watcher saw the file change, then started .NET Run again. And then I hit restore, and the whole thing is being recompiled, but it's happening so quickly
That you don't even notice.
Exactly. Okay. So that is a really basic Hello World application. .NET Core is installed, Visual Studio Core is installed, ASP.NET Core. We're using the Kestrel web server, and we added watching
To the application. So Scott, if I want to continue learning, what are the resources that I can use?
So if we return to .NET, the website as before, and you click on documentation, there's a whole section of documentation on .NET Core and ASP.NET Core. And right there at the top, there's featured content that says getting started with .NET Core. That would be like console apps and kind of the fundamentals of .NET Core, the fundamentals of C#. And then on top of .NET Core is layered ASP.NET Core. We click on that. There is great and detailed documentation on your first application. And that's part of what we're going to go through today. So that was a brief intro to .NET Core, Visual Studio Code, and just a little bit of ASP.NET.
Just a smidge.
Just a smidge. And next, we're going to go a little bit deeper into an introduction for ASP.NET Core as we continue this course.